interview here.
Yeah, total John Delaney hour interview. All right. So, Mormon fans, we've got Ethan Dodge on the live hangout today. Um, Ethan Dodge, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Um, so recently, well, for those of you who don't know, Ethan Dodge, he is, what would you call yourself? A contributor or a partner, or what is the official title over there at MormonLeaks?
The title that we use to sound official, as cheesy as it is technical director, and Ryan McKnight, my counterpart, is executive director.
Awesome. So Ryan McKnight and Ethan Dodge, correct me if anything I say is incorrect, are the two main contributors, or the two guys that are primarily in charge of keeping WikiLeaks.io, not .com, important distinction, up and running.
MormonLeaks. MormonLeaks.io,
Oh,
not WikiLeaks.
MormonLeaks.io.
It's okay. You're not I make that mistake all the time too. So
Yes. Cool. But tell me a little bit, how did you get involved with MormonLeaks.io, and how did this come about? What was the genesis for you starting there? And I guess you could give us a little bit of backstory on just Mormon Leaks in general as well.
yeah, so I've told this story most recently and potentially most in detail on the recent KUTV interview that I did. But basically, I became aware of Ryan McKnight when the infamous November policy came to light, because he played a small part in bringing that to light and bringing that to the public.
And this is
I
the
was,
policy about not baptizing children of gay adults, right? Gay parents.
yeah, yeah. So that would be November of 2015. Um, and Yeah, so I was still active in the church then. Um, I was I'd say on my way out, I guess. I think is a fair way to characterize it. But still active. I had my own problems and issues with the policy. But that I became aware of Ryan and his part that he played in that. Um, and then I saw a few things that he kind of became the go-to guy in the ex-Mormon world. If you had documents or something confidential from within the church that you thought deserved to be out there, he kind of became the go-to guy to get it to. And then he was just releasing this stuff on Reddit. But MormonLeaks was very much born on the ex-Mormon subreddit. The ex-Mormon subreddit has since become a whole different environment than what it was back then, and that's a different story. But anyway, so then
I guess, quick question.
Mhm.
When you say you were on your way out, what was your in? What were you fully active, born in the church, gone on mission, all that kind of stuff? Or where were you? Where was your peak? Where was your low? What were, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I was born in the church. I was not born in the covenant, but that's just because my mom, her pre she my dad is her second husband, and her previous temple selling had not been annulled yet. And so that's the only reason I was not born in the covenant. I was sealed to my parents 6 weeks after being born. But anyway, so I'm a seventh generation Mormon on both sides of my family, pioneer stock on both sides. Um, yeah, so born in Salt Lake City, raised in Utah County. Um,
So plenty of people on the other side of the veil weeping for you.
yeah, yep. Many. Yeah, I mean, I was Mormon through and through. I like to say that I lived the Mormon dream, I guess. Um, I went through all the milestones, all the rites of passage. Baptized at 8, received the priesthood at 12, did baptisms for the dead. I never dated a girl steady until my wife. Like, not that's how Mormon I was. And I mean, not I I say that jokingly. Obviously, I know there are many different interpretations, and that's much more of a cultural expectation, obviously. But anyway, I get. I think you and your listeners get what I'm saying here. So at that point, when I say I was on my way out, um, I had started having problems with the church. I guess with its history. Um, One of the biggest things that I felt betrayed about was betrayed by, excuse me, was the Book of Mormon translation, and the reason why, and the fact that that Joseph Smith used a seer stone, right?
So
And
that you
that
didn't know about the seer stone until later, like until you were like teenager or 20s, I guess.
no, yeah, I would. Let's see, I was 25
Wow.
in November 2015. So yeah, I didn't know about that. I had served a mission from 2009 to 2011, and I taught people about the Book of Mormon's translation my entire mission, right? And I never ever had heard of this seer stone. Um, so that was very heartbreaking to me. That specifically was very hard for me to swallow. I also, um, but that was I'm sure you're familiar with the analogy of the shelf, right? That I wouldn't say that that was the heaviest item on my shelf by any means. Likely the heaviest item on my shelf was the immense amount of shame and cultural pressure that I felt my entire life for not um, fitting a perfect Mormon mold that I felt pressured to fit.
And where did you grow up, if you don't mind me asking? Because I know that that kind of changes based on where people are residing a little bit.
Yeah, I grew up in North Utah County.
North Utah County.
Um, yeah, so so that's right in the heart of Mormonville.
Yeah. If there was a cultural center, um, or a place where culture reigned supreme over doctrine, I would, I love my friends in Utah County, but there's a lot of definitely a lot of culture that creeps its way into um, doctrine and pseudo doctrine.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that was pretty much like my entire upbringing was it was um it was very hard to differentiate between culture and doctrine. And that wasn't really something that I learned how to do until probably my mission or even after my mission, right? And but I still experienced like all growing up, I experienced um, these feelings of shame and guilt and pressure, like I said, to fit this specific mold. And it's not, and again, it's not that the church was necessarily um, making me feel that way, but more so the culture, right?
Mhm.
And if I and I
Is there
have, I
anything
don't talk about.
specifically that like you feel didn't fit the mold per se? Just
Um, yeah, I mean, so I was really. It's funny because um, like I was so Mormon, like I was trying to think. Like I never really had any particularly like egregious sins that I had to confess to my bishop, right? I never really had anything um that I felt would put my salvation in peril. However, um like I really really enjoyed music, and I was in bands all through high school and college.
Mhm.
Um, and I always really enjoyed a lot of harder music and a lot of music with some language that a lot of other people wouldn't like. Music that I didn't necessarily feel comfortable listening to if my bishop was there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Or
for
as a
sure.
lot of people would say, if the Savior was there. Um,
I grew up on Eminem and Linkin Park and all sorts of weird stuff that I wouldn't have felt comfortable if the Savior was there. So I understand, yes.
yeah, and I know it, and it sounds really silly and petty, and I also think it highlights the amount of privilege that I grew up with,
Right.
right? That I experienced in my life, and that's fine. I fully recognize that, but um, it definitely caused me a lot of shame, and it also escalated to the point where so like I said, I was in bands all through high school, and I really wanted to be a rock star, and do that professionally, to the point where I decided I didn't want to go on a mission, um, because I didn't want. So I didn't want to go on a mission because I wanted to go and play music professionally, in a band, and because I didn't want to go on a mission, I decided, rather than not going on a mission and facing the cultural shame, it would be easier for me to leave the church. This was all when I was about 18 years old, a senior in high school. And so I decided that I was going to leave the church, and then, excuse me, it kind of came in phases, and it started when I was a senior in high school, but the actual decision to leave the church didn't happen until I was a freshman in college, the year before my mission. And I remember when that had kind of come out to my friends and family, I was immediately bombarded with all these people trying to convince me otherwise, convince me that I was making a huge mistake. And I know, like, a lot of this was out of love, and I really appreciated and everything. I still felt and experienced so much shame and guilt for that desire that I had to not go on a mission. Right.
So you were a freshman in college around 2016, is that right? Am I getting the timeline correct?
No. So, sorry, this was back in 2008, 2009. I graduated high school in 2008.
Oh, okay. So there was like kind of two times of leaving almost.
Yeah. So yeah, when I was 18, 19, actually when I was 18, because I left on I turned around, went on my mission actually a week after I turned 19. So this whole phase, to me, to 18-year-old impressionable me, it was like a lifetime, but really it was only like 6 months. Right.
I just probably want to get into the timeline a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. So let me back up. So yeah, 18, 19, my whole 18-year-old year there, didn't want to go on a mission, wanted to go be a rock star, stopped going to church. What felt an immense amount of pressure from my friends and family to go on a mission, made the decision to go on a mission, quickly put in my papers, went on a mission a week after I turned 19 in August 2009, and came back in August 2011.
Oh, that's like pretty much when I was there too. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah? Where did you serve?
England, Leeds.
Okay, cool. I was in Guatemala City Central.
Oh, cool. One of my best friends just went to Guatemala last week. He said it was great, except for the time he spent with his hurt stomach.
Oh,
don't drink water.
I still have. Yeah, that was a mistake I made very quickly, and I still have issues with my digestion because of it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna put you in an awkward spot on your mission. What was the most spiritual event that happened to you on your mission?
Most spiritual event that happened to me on my mission
that you recognized as a spiritual event at the time, I guess, or if
that is a terrific question. Yeah, so there was a woman that we were teaching, and her dad was a pastor for an evangelical church down there in Guatemala, and in Guatemala, pretty much everybody is either Catholic or evangelico is how you say it in Spanish, which I've always just said evangelical, but that would be the equivalent of Protestant here in the United States. So, and the Protestants in Guatemala, they get really fired up and when they're preaching and everything, and all about hellfire and brimstone and all that stuff, and they're also clapping during their services and stuff like that. And so this one particular woman that we were teaching, she was progressing very well. She was accepting the doctrine very well, was understanding it, was doing all the things that she was a golden investigator, as you would say in the mission sometimes. And when let's see, I can't remember exactly what happened. I'd have to go back in my journal and look, but for some reason she asked us to stop coming. And we were just devastated because this came out of the blue, right? And we had no idea why. And again, I'd have to go back and read my journal, but I believe it has to do something with her dad, right? Because her dad was a pastor. She was not living with her dad at the time, but he had found out or something like that. Anyway, and me and my companion, we prayed for her. You know, as a missionary, you pray how many times a day? Like 20 times a day. Yes. And literally in every single prayer, that hold on just one second.
No problem.
Anyway, so literally in every single prayer that we made every day, we would pray for her. I'm sorry, give me just 1 minute. So we'd been praying for her every single prayer that we say every single day, and I remember we were very, very specific in our prayers and saying that, like, please help her to know that Joseph Smith was a prophet and that he restored the church, the true Church of God, and things like that. And we gave her space for about a week,
which is an eternity in missionary time.
Yes, absolute eternity of missionary time. And after a week, we go back, and we talked to her, and she told us that she had been reading the Book of Mormon every single day that whole week, and that one night after she had finished reading it, she had looked over, and Guatemalans are known for being visionaries in the sense that, like, they have very realistic dreams or visions. And she, after one night after reading the Book of Mormon, she shut the Book of Mormon and looked over and saw me and my companion on next to her bed praying for her, right? And that was incredible to me, absolutely incredible. And she did end up getting baptized, despite her father being an evangelical pastor and absolutely not wanting it. And she actually, it's also a very, very sad story because she actually, her father, after her baptism, beat her so bad that she couldn't walk.
Whoa.
And she had to be carried up to the pulpit the next Sunday to be confirmed.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a very, very powerful experience to see what she sacrificed and went through to be baptized. And that was by far the most spiritual experience that I had in my mission, for sure.
Cool. I mean, a natural follow-up question to that is how do you now reconcile that, right? I mean,
yeah.
Wasn't intending to go here, but we're here, so.
Yeah, no worries. So that just a little backstory. So I mean, I mean, I'm openly atheist. I don't believe in a God, right, anymore. However, I definitely do believe in people's. I do believe in the power of the human mind, right? In that it can see things that people not, I don't want to say it can see things, but that people can see what they want to see. And I also don't want to say, like, this sounds like hallucinations. I don't, like, a lot of people will say that Joseph Smith was hallucinating when he saw all these visions. And I don't like that at all. I don't think that's the case, right? I guess how I reconcile it is that, yeah, maybe she did see me and my companion praying for her, right? Because that's what she wanted to see and that's what she needed to see. I mean, the human mind is a very incredibly powerful thing, and I don't know that I could explain it any further than that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll put that on pause. Put that on our spiritual shelf that might come tumbling back down. What uniquely qualifies you? What are your attributes to work on MormonLeaks? Because I've read some about you, but I want you to be able to, what is your bio? What does your resume say?
Yeah, so I am a cybersecurity professional, and I specialize in digital forensics. And that's how I got involved with MormonLeaks, was when Ryan released the 15 videos of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles in their private meetings. I had heard how he got them from his source, and how he came to release them. And I said, look, like, you're leaving digital fingerprints all over the place that could be traced back to your source. And if the church, I mean, if this ever got into a legal situation, your source can be in big trouble, and let me help you avoid that, because I do think it's important that these kind of things come to light, that people are more informed, and that people can see what's going on behind the curtain and what they're putting their tithing money to. And so I stepped in, I set up an anonymous submission system, and yeah, that's I guess that I don't know if that answers your question, but those are the talents that I offer MormonLeaks.
Yeah, no, totally. And this is while you were still active again on The Verge?
No. So by it was March 2016 that I decided that I no longer believed the church was true. And then October of 2016 is when I reached out to Ryan McKnight, and then December 2016 is when we actually launched the website MormonLeaks. Actually, when we very first launched it, it was MormonWikiLeaks.com.
Okay.
And then we changed it to MormonLeaks.io.
Got it. It's interesting because when Ryan had released the children of gay parents not being able to be baptized, I had a tremendous difficulty with it. It was about a year before I even felt spiritually right again. Like, it got to the point where I was like, essentially all my tithing money from 2016 went into a savings account because I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in, like, I'm like, well, I'm not going to pay my tithing if I'm not sure I'm going to stay in. So I'll pay it, but I'm going to keep it in a savings account. And then if at the end of the year I'm here, then we'll be good. And by the end of the year, I had kind of reconciled some things, and was more into activity, and I don't remember my exact timeline. So you can look at my videos that I've made for the timeline, because there's the videos that I made regarding that situation, and then there was a specific date where the stake presidency had come to my ward for some missionary farewells, and I had asked, because I was really on the edge of my testimony and just not sure, I had asked the stake president to basically come aside and talk to me for a bit after sacrament. And he had asked his first counselor to come in too, because they were kind of traveling together. And he just had this, as you say, I must be Guatemalan, because I had an amazing vision sitting there, as they were talking. And it basically reconciled all my opposition and doubts to that policy. I can't say that it was something that I wanted or wished for. I can just say it was something that happened. And that's kind of how a lot of my different spiritual experiences have been. There was another time when, there's just different promptings that I've had. And a lot of them weren't necessarily something that I wanted, but they were just something that happened and led me to find answers or help people that were in need. So, yeah, anyways, that's my, my experience with MormonLeaks. So I definitely understand how a lot of this information can harm people's testimonies. And even with the seer stones, that didn't hit me. I know a lot of people that it hit. And I just Googled to confirm what I was thinking when you were saying that. And that was that the seer stones are talked about in the introduction of the Book of Mormon. And I confirmed, I'm like, yeah, it is. Okay. But I realize now that I didn't realize before that it doesn't specifically say in the Book of Mormon. It talks about how he finds the seer stones. It talks about how he translates by the gift and power of God, but it doesn't specifically say the seer stones were used to translate in like the same sentence, right? You kind of would have to piece it together or read more church history to get that. And somewhere as a child, you know, growing up, I was taught that. And so when it was revealed more publicly and more openly, I guess, in grandiose fashion, I could definitely understand where if someone hadn't read that or heard that before, that you'd feel blindsided, you'd feel lied to. And so I definitely understand that.
Yeah, well, it's not so much the seer stones themselves, and let's be clear. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I've read the introduction of the Book of Mormon, but I believe it doesn't actually say seer stones, and it says the and Thummim. And
the box which lay was formed by laying stones together, some kind of cement. In the box were laid 2 stones crossways. No, that was the wrong part. You keep talking. I'll try to find it, but you might be right.
Yeah, and so the greater betrayal for me was the depiction my entire life in every single painting of Joseph Smith, you know, glossing his fingers over the gold plates and translating word by word, when in reality he stuck a stone in a hat and looked in the hat and claimed that the words of the Book of Mormon were appearing on that stone.
Right. So this is the paragraph. It says, also there were 2 stones and silver bows, and these stones fastened to a breastplate constituted what is called the and Thummim, deposited with the plates. The possession and use of these stones were what constituted seers in ancient and former times, and God had prepared them for the purpose of translating the book. So it's
right. So I was aware of this and Thummim, but I was not aware of and I mean, the and Thummim that says plural stones when in reality he put 1 stone into the hat. As far as I know, I'm not an official total historian on this. I have read quite a bit on the topic, right? But I mean, then the church has released pictures of the 1 stone that he put in the hat, right? It's that chocolate looking stone, and he put it in a hat. And the church is starting to do a better job of releasing pictures that have been in the ensign of him holding a hat, right?
Yeah.
And I applaud them for that. And I know there's a lot of debate of whether or not he translated the entire Book of Mormon with the stone in the hat, or just portions of it, or the majority of it, or whatever, right? The problem that I have is that that was never ever depicted to me, and I was literally going out and teaching people the traditional narrative when that was not completely true. And
so, had you have known that the Book of Mormon was translated with a stone in the hat, would that have changed your testimony?
No, that's the thing, and that's what I've always said is, I think if the church had been more forthcoming with a lot of these things, that I don't think they would have shaken me as much as or other people. You know, I think that they would have just been totally perfectly fine, right? Some other things that don't really bother me, but I understand why they would bother other people, are multiple accounts of the first vision. You know, I think if that had been addressed from the very get-go and had been a well-known fact, I don't think that would have been a lot of problems and a lot of heavy items on people's shelves. And that's kind of the thought behind MormonLeaks, right? Like, if the church were just transparent about these kind of things, whether it's their history or their finances or you know, their policies, their internal policies, if the church were more transparent about these things, I don't think, and more upright, I don't think they'd be nearly as shocking.
Yeah,
right.
I get that.
And so when people accuse me of destroying testimonies or tearing apart eternal families, right? Like, yes, I've actually been accused of tearing apart eternal families. I think I just don't I don't agree with that, because the church, like, if the church could avoid much of this fallout if they were just more transparent in the first place.
Yeah, that's got to be I mean, I'm sure you have another way of, you know, deflecting that, but that's got to be a pretty heavy weight. You know, you got to feel a little bit. Is there anything that you and Ryan do to sort of I don't know the right term, but mitigate loss of testimony per se, or does that make sense?
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out. Is there anything we mitigate to what?
Um, to people losing their testimony. Like, I mean, I've done the Mormon stuff for a long time, and I stopped these videos for a while. One, because I was, losing my testimony for a little bit, or losing the faith that the church was currently being led. More than losing my testimony in the Book of Mormon, it was just my faith in the current leadership and the policies they were making. That was where my testimony was being shaken. My testimonies of God and the Book of Mormon, I feel like I genuinely can't like separate them from myself, especially my testimony about God and his existence. But that's a little bit different. But anyways, I've been there's certainly a lot of anti-Mormon people, anti-Mormons that I've met, and that their specific goal is to bring people out of Mormonism. Their specific goal is to get people to, rescind their membership because they're following the devil. They don't. Most of these people are evangelical Christians that I've met anyway, and not all of them. Some of them are different, but the most of them I met are like the very staunch biblical Christians that think that we're following Satan, and it doesn't matter if we don't follow God anymore. They would like for us to be Christian, but right now we're following Satan, and so that's even worse. Is there anything you guys do to prevent that kind of vitriolic, stuff from seeping into the leaks?
Yeah, I mean, we try to. I don't. I if Let's see. We often are accused of being anti-Mormons, which I don't think is complete. I don't think is fair at all. Um, and that's because I am not an anti-Mormon. I want people to do whatever makes them happy, and if that is staying in the church, awesome. I just want them to be informed while making that decision, right? Um, I'm not like, do I have bitter feelings towards the church? Yes. I mean, that would be ridiculous for me to deny that. However, if we get accused of being anti-Mormons, and a lot of that is because of how the press portrays things that we leak, and we can't be held responsible for how the press portrays things. If you go to our actual website and read the words that, we actually write, that we try to remain as neutral as possible. And obviously biases are always going to seep through, and no matter how benign or how subtle, right? That's impossible. But we typically, with a document, we say what it is, right? We say when it was created, if we know when it was created, and we say when it was released. A lot of times people get mad at us because we'll release like 200 pages of these documents, and we won't give like a TLDR. And it's because if we were to give a TLDR, all of our biases would come out.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And
But
so we just let other
people
people do that.
Yeah, and other people are left to give their too long didn't read, and that's one of the reasons why I think I've felt compelled to come back. Kind of, I mean, I've got like 300 views on these videos, right? So it's not like a huge following. One of the obligations that I feel to come back and make these videos is there needs to be a voice that is receiving these videos and receiving this information and talking about it from a faith-based stance as well. I feel like I might be, like if there's the window, like if there was like the total like Salt Lake Tribune and the total KSL, like I'm probably a little bit more KSL, but I don't think that I'm like I don't think I'm all the way over, or Deseret News maybe. I try to be fairly biased. I do appreciate what you guys are trying to do. One thing that I found interesting was you said that you feel that if the church was more transparent and had been more forthcoming with a lot of this information, that it wouldn't have been as shocking for you. So in a way, you might be doing missionary work and helping people stay in the church. I mean, it might be a Band-Aid right now, but in the long run, you're helping the 12-year-old, the 16-year-old that's about to go get ready for his mission know this kind of stuff before he really gets deep into his testimony, and it won't become a shock when he's 30.
Yeah, and that's something that I've actually argued before. I don't typically like to go there just because I don't think I should have to justify what we release. But literally 95% of the things that we release can be spun in a positive light for the church, right? In fact, there are many things that we've released that I personally think do put the church in a good light, right? And it's not like it's not like pretty much if we receive an internal document from the church, if we can verify its authenticity, it's going to be released, right? With some exceptions, but for the most part, like 95% of the things that we've been able to verify and their authenticity, we have released because otherwise we're playing judge and jury right there, right? And our biases come out in that process.
I totally appreciate that. What is there one or two or three things that stick out that were like, wow, good job, Mormon Church, proud of you?
Yeah, the one that I always point to is the church's stance on immigration and welfare, and that we released a memo to bishops saying that they should not take people's immigration status into consideration when providing them with welfare, and if they're here illegally, that should not affect their chances of getting welfare from the church. And to me, that's an incredible thing and well done.
Nice. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, there was the church. I think there's been several things that we've released from the church in which it shows that they are concerned for the protection of their members. Oh shoot, there was a letter from L. Whitney Clayton that we released about what was the name of the group? The Rainbow Group or something like that. Some group that has been known to they have conferences in the mountains all over the United States.
Yeah. It is Rainbow something.
Yeah, and they were having one in Heber, very close to the Heber girls camp that they own, and they were warning the leaders, I can't remember exactly who, that this was going to be happening at the same time and to keep an eye out, right? And I thought that was also good. Like I don't blame the church for sending that at all because they're concerned for the safety of the attendees of their camp, right? So
yeah, Rainbow Family or something.
Yeah, that sounds right. Rainbow Family, and I don't particularly know if they're dangerous or something, but like if there's going to be a big group of people near a property where I'm liable for the safety of the people there, like I think that's I think that's completely understandable.
For sure. And maybe you can appreciate this as like a professional data scientist. I imagine that you're compensated well. I don't know, but when I saw the church's like when you guys released the financials, I always knew that the 70 were paid, and I always assumed that the quorum of the 12 apostles were living in some sort of like law of consecration thing, but I don't really know how that all works, and I'm guessing there's still some ambiguities there. But when you guys released the pay stubs, like comparative to other similar sized private organization or public organizations and similar sized churches, like I thought that the church was compensating its hierarchy very minimal in relation, but I know that that's not the way everyone saw it. But that's, I think when I did the research, there were of the most comparable size to the church, like their CEO was making like $8 million a year, where at least the pay stubs that we saw from apostles, it was like, it was like six figures or something.
Yeah. So we released pay stubs from 1999 of Henry B. Eyring, and his gross pay was like in the high 80s or low 90s back in 1999. And then the same day we released a memo of a 70 getting a living allowance bump from 114,000 to 120,000, and then the church, Eric Hawkins, the church PR spokesman, came out that same day and said that all general authorities are paid the same. So it's to be assumed that in 2014 they were all getting paid $120,000. I have seen different estimates of what they're getting paid now in 2018 with cost of living going up. I'm just going to stick with the 120,000 number. I think it's the most fair. It probably is slightly higher because of inflation and whatnot. But let's just stick with 120. And I would agree with you in the sense I don't know that it's like I wouldn't say it's very minimal. It's especially in the state of Utah, right? Like that's a very good salary. However, yeah, no, I'll be honest with you. I was surprised that it wasn't higher. Um, However, I do think that the defense that a lot of people go to that yeah, like if they were CEOs and they were doing what they're doing at a private corporation, they'd be getting paid a lot of money, and that is very true. But I think that makes some very interesting implications because a lot of people's beef with the church is that they're more of a business and a corporation than a religion. Like a lot of people make that argument, and it's very, and I think there's a lot of interesting implications that people immediately use that as a defense that, well, if they were CEOs, well, why are we using a business defense there, right? A defense related to business. And anyway, I just think there's some interesting implications, but I completely agree with you.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think that the implication doesn't stand, and that's where my justification is like, if they were running like a business, right, then President Nelson would be compensated based on tithing, right? Maybe, or the performance of the businesses themselves. And I kind of separate those two, right? Like in my mind, there is the business entity of the church that does run for-profit businesses, and there is the church that I see as doing, ecclesiastical stuff. So we got like Deseret News, KSL, all the ranches and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure some of them are 501c3s, but for the most part, there's a lot of for-profit and like life insurance and all the health and all the other stuff, medical. I mean, we used to own Primary Children's Hospital, right? And LDS Hospital and all that stuff before we sold it. So there definitely were for-profit entities. And I see that in a different boat than I see the ecclesiastical stuff. And so my thought is if they are only being compensated an equal amount of $120,000 and all of them are getting paid equally, then that definitely shows that, when President Nelson says, hey, West Africa, pay your tithing and you'll be blessed, and hey, don't pay a dowry and you'll be blessed, and stuff like that. And it's like, to me, he's definitely not being incentivized by his pay. He's not being, that's typically what a CEO is incentivized by, if I get good quarterly numbers, I'm going to get an extra $600,000, I'm going to get an extra $100 million, whatever it may be, because of my performance. But from what we know, the leadership of the church doesn't operate that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment given what we know. I know that a lot of people will speculate that. I think I demonstrated this when that I didn't want to go with a higher figure estimate and that I wanted to stick with $120,000. A lot of people will estimate that, yeah, they're probably getting their mortgages paid for, and all their cars and all this stuff. And there's evidence to suggest that, but I like to stick with the hard concrete evidence. And so with what we currently know, I would agree with what you just said.
Cool. Ryan McKnight, how is he to work with? I don't know much about him. I know anything about him. From his Facebook page, I know that he likes hockey.
He does like hockey. That's actually a very recent interest because this is the Vegas Golden Knights' very first year, and he bought season tickets on a whim, and it's actually been a great thing for him because now they're in the Stanley Cup. But Ryan's a great guy. I did not know him at all before reaching out to him, other than what I saw him post on Reddit and whatnot. And now I would consider him one of my best friends. We see eye to eye on almost everything, but at the same time, we're not afraid to push back on the other's opinion or the other's opinion, right? In fact, a lot of times we disagree on how we should frame things, how we should what we should release, when we should release it, stuff like that. And especially on like the more controversial things that we've released. But it's good because we keep each other in check and we can do it without going at each other's throats.
Cool. Well, if you ever need a biased on the other half of the spectrum party, let me know and I'll see what I can do to help you guys.
I appreciate that.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think that's pretty much all my questions. I normally, when I'm interviewing someone who is active LDS, I usually leave this time to let them bear their testimony. But um, whatever that is to you, whatever the testimony that you do have, or the guidance that you would like to give to those struggling with some of the releases or seeking more information, what would you say to those people? And then I think we'll sign off after you do so.
Yeah. I guess I would say, like I've said publicly many times, that people need to do what makes them happy. If that's staying in the church and living it how you've always lived it, awesome. If that's leaving the church and starting a completely different life or whatever, awesome. If that is picking and choosing what you like about the church and what you don't, doing Mormonism your own way, if that's finding a completely different religion, is it whatever makes you happy. And that's something that I have learned more than anything in leaving the church, is that individuality and authenticity is so incredibly important to living a happy life, that people need to live and be their authentic selves. And I feel more authentic than I ever have been than I ever have since leaving the church. And people need to do what their authentic selves tell them to do. And that is where you're going to find happiness. And like I said, if that's in the church, awesome. If that's out of the church, awesome as well. My mission is, as I said, is to help people make informed decisions there. Help people know where their tithing money is going, help people know what's going on behind the scenes, what the decisions that these people are making that affect their lives more than they may even realize, right? As far as, yeah, I just do what makes you happy, be good to other people, and I'm very much a humanist in the sense that, I mean, I don't know. I think I've portrayed in this interview pretty well that I'm not your typical anti-angry ex-Mormon, and that I'm very much more open to the idea that people can be happy, and by making decisions that I have not made, or right, and that everybody has their own path, and do your best to find it and follow it.
Cool, man. Well, I selfishly hope that you do come back one day and we can go do a temple sesh together. Everybody, Ethan Dodge, thank you so much for doing this, and setting the record straight and letting us into your mind for a little while. And I also thank you for accepting my Facebook friend request.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, man.
Cool. Have a great night.
You
Just
too.
remember, you won't love it unless you live it.
Thanks. See ya.